Mama. Jack. What do you both want for my life? Other than to piss me off. I know, you always want treats. I know. No. No treats for you. Bad puppies. No. So much better. Ew. What?
For being at odds with members of his own party, and he used an interview on Fox News to cement that reputation.
If I can't go home and explain it to the people of West Virginia, I can't vote for it. And I cannot vote to continue with this piece of legislation. I just can't.
Without Manchin's support, there are not enough votes to pass President Joe Biden's at least $1.5 trillion Build Back Better bill, which includes universal preschool, a plan to lower drug prices, more than $500 billion for clean energy, and a tax credit for the purchase of U.S.-made electric vehicles.
I would have hoped that we could have had at least 50 Democrats on board who have the guts to stand up for working families.
The White House is furious. The press secretary said in a statement, Manchin's comments represent a sudden and inexplicable reversal in his position, and we will continue to press him to see if he will reverse his position yet again. In Canada, a very different reaction.
Right now, Canadian interests are well served by what the senator has said he would do. Let's wait and see if he sticks to that.
Ottawa is opposed to the electric vehicle tax credit since it would entice auto producers to choose the U.S. over Canada for new investment, meaning lost Canadian jobs. Ministers have lobbied American lawmakers, pleading with them to change or scrap that section of the bill. While these developments help, auto industry leaders say Canada can't relax yet.
We're on DEFCON 1 for Canadian prosperity. and we've gone back and forth over the last few weeks. I think we should continue to do the same thing.
The EV tax credit is the biggest irritant in the Canada-US relationship. Ottawa will now watch to see whether the White House can get Senator Manchin back on board or whether it draws up a new, smaller legislation package. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Glad to see you sold out.
I want to talk about some troubling discrepancies that I've seen from the CDC. These are things that have happened over the last week, and they just keep sticking with me, so I want to talk about them. First up, a discrepancy between what the CDC director told ABC News and what was revealed at a CDC meeting later that week. This is the ABC News headline. I'm going to show it right here on the screen. It says, with nearly 5 million children getting COVID vaccines, no safety problems have been seen, CDC director says. This is dated December 10th, and that is the ABC News headline. But let me read you the article for fear that the headline mischaracterizes the piece. It says this: with nearly 5 million children aged 5 to 11 now vaccinated against COVID-19, CDC Director Rochelle Walensky says real-world monitoring finds vaccines are safe for young children. Crucially, the CDC hasn't identified any concerns with the temporary heart inflammation known as myocarditis, a potential side effect of mRNA vaccines seen in rare circumstances in teens and young adults. We haven't seen anything yet, Walensky told ABC News chief medical correspondent Dr. Jennifer Ashton in a rare in-person interview from CDC headquarters in Atlanta. We have an incredibly robust vaccine safety system, and if problems were there, we would find it. This is what the article says. Now, of course, myocarditis has been well documented in the ages 12 to 40, but particularly in that subgroup of 16 to 24, boys more than girls, Moderna more than Pfizer. This is something that many people are concerned about. It's a real safety signal. And the reason it's important is that it occurs more often on dose 2 than dose 1. And there might be a way to deliver vaccines to many people to preserve the benefit of vaccination, but to mitigate the harms, to try to vaccinate in a way with perhaps a different dosing schedule, as I've talked about in a prior video, perhaps a different dose to actually have less myocarditis, but as much efficacy as you possibly have. Now, naturally, when the 5 to 11 EUA came out, people were concerned that that safety signal will also be present in the younger age group. We didn't know for sure, of course. Myocarditis, of course, mostly a post-pubescent phenomenon, but people worried that it might be there in the prepubescent group. And so, naturally, you would want the CDC director to tell you accurately what they see and what they don't see. And on December 10th, this is what she said. And so I thought to myself, wow, 5 million people, not a single case, that's good news. And if anything, it might be a little bit too good to be true, but it's good. And a lot of people went forward saying that there's absolutely no safety signal seen here in 5 million cases. That's the usual Twitter sort of incorrect expert take. And some people privately told me that let's hang back a little bit until we get some more data and we can see the data. Then on December 16th at the CDC meeting to discuss what we're going to do with J&J, they presented information on myocarditis to VAERS among children aged 5 to 11. And this is what they report. I'm going to show you the slide right here. This is from the CDC's own slide. And it actually says on this slide, as of December 10th, 2021, the same date the CDC director is talking to ABC News, doses administered, 7.1 million. As of December 9th, the day before, 3,233 reports to the VAERS among children aged 5 to 11. There are 14 reports of myocarditis. 5 reports follow-up is in progress. 9 reports of information obtained. 8 reports met CDC working case definition for myocarditis. That's in bold. That's their bold, not my bold. 4 men, 4 female. 4 male, 4 female. After dose 1, 2 cases. After dose 2, 6 cases. 1 report under review. And then the next slide. This describes in detail the cases. Patient number 1 was 6 years old, male, chest pain, elevated troponins, you can see on the screen. Patient number 2, female, 7 years old, chest pain, elevated troponins, normal EKG and echo, still recovering at the time of report. Patient number 3, 8 years old, onset, 2 days. Dose number 2, chest pain, elevated troponins, symptoms resolved. Patient number 4, a 9-year-old male, chest pain, elevated troponins, and the list goes on and on. Now, what is going on here? What is going on? There are many things we can debate. One thing we can debate is this rate of myocarditis higher than baseline? Well, because of course there's some baseline rate of myocarditis all the time. The answer is, I don't know for sure based on these numbers, but I suspect that when you have a safety signal you've already identified in other ages, and you're starting to see this with sort of this classic pattern, this classic few days after dose 2 pattern, elevated troponins, I think it will likely be attributable to vaccine. That's not going to be a surprise. The next question is this the rate that's going to emerge? Really only going to be 14 cases out of 7 million? And the answer is no. This is early in a passive surveillance system. The rate will change over time. I don't know what the rate will be. I personally think it will likely be the case that 16 to 24 has the peak rate. So I don't think it'll be as high as that. That's just a guess. But I think there will be some rate here. But put all that aside. What is going on with the CDC director's statement to ABC News? When she was talking to ABC, she said specifically, we have an incredibly robust safety system, and if problems were there, we would find it. And, quote, we haven't seen anything yet. But she had their own analysis with the data halt 1 day before. Is she not aware of the analysis? Does she not know what analyses are being performed in the CDC? That's not going to be good. Or is she aware of it and somehow incorrectly characterizing it to the news, which is also not good. But either way, whatever the explanation is, this is not good. No, who is going to trust this person again when you are getting caught lying? And that's the word for it, because I don't know what else was going on. Either you didn't know, or you knew and you were deliberately saying it. But either way, what you're saying was untrue. It was untrue at the time you said it. And it matters a great deal. Actually, it's not a trivial matter. It's a sensitive matter that people are very sensitive about naturally. And people want to know the actual signals, safety signals. And people debated this for a long period of time. They've debated it for many months because the benefits to kids of that age group are going to be smaller and the risks are going to be much more salient and relevant. And so, what am I to think about this CDC director? I don't like this at all. I got to be careful how I put it, but I think it's absolutely unacceptable. People are concerned about this. You can say, I don't know. I haven't seen anything, but they're running the analysis right now. No one has told me yet, but we're running the analysis. But to have this contradiction in a short period of time absolutely loses all credibility, and it's devastating. I think that credibility is sunk. Next thing I want to say, this wasn't the only story that caught my eye. There was another story in Bloomberg, and also maybe I'll show the Axios report. It's called CDC Overcounts Millions of Vaccinations, and it basically says that over the last week, they have lowered the percent vaccinated among the 65 and older cohort who received at least one shot from 99.9%, where it had been for weeks, to 95% without changing any raw shot totals. And people say, Illinois, Pennsylvania, West Virginia found overcounting of first shots in their database. Pennsylvania says, according to Bloomberg, the CDC estimates of first doses exceed state estimates by 850,000. Illinois had more than 500,000 completely unvaccinated people than initially thought. There are widespread discrepancies. One person, James Garrow, a spokesperson for Philadelphia Department of Public Health, says, quote, we don't have any faith in the numbers on the CDC website, and we never refer to them. Where it has really made it difficult for us is targeting our booster messaging, Garrow said. The truth is we have no idea, says Clay Marsh, West Virginia COVID czar. Can y'all count? This is not a hard thing. How many people got the first dose? How many people got the second dose? How many people got boosters? And how many people are there in the country? This is rudimentary numbers. This is numbers 101. You don't need to go to much school to know how to count. And simple counting of how many people got the shot would be a basic core competency of agency.
Yeah.
These are two huge errors. I don't know how to put it. You don't know that your own analysis done on a data halt the day before is finding myocarditis, and you're telling the news we don't find anything. And two, you can't even seem to count how many people have gotten the vaccine. I don't know what to say. I think this is disgraceful. There are many people online who are lamenting the current state of the pandemic. They say things like, how can we be where we are right now and people don't have home test kits, people don't have this, people don't have that. I mean, these are legitimate points. I mean, yeah, how can we be where we are now? And you go to the store and the home test kits are sold out. How can that be? But I might ask a more simple question, which is how can you be where we are now and the CDC of a premier nation spending trillions of dollars on this pandemic or losing trillions of dollars on this pandemic cannot even keep count of how many vaccines have been administered? What does that say? What does that say? I don't know what to say. I think this is the huge failure. Anyone responsible for this should be summarily fired and we should get new people in charge. Because this is a huge failure. You can't even tell me how many vaccines were given. You have no clue. You're inaccurate. Other agencies are literally saying that they cannot trust your numbers. And you also are going public at a very sensitive time. And you're telling ABC that we have seen nothing when your own analysis a few days later is presented at the meeting and it just contradicts that. I don't know what to say. This is embarrassing. It's a painful state. I mean, there's stuff that people always get wrong and you can give them the benefit of the doubt. And then there's core competencies, just knowing what's going on in your shop, being able to count. And there's no forgiving that. It's just not good enough to get that wrong when you're at this level. I wouldn't tolerate it even at a far lower level. I certainly won't tolerate it here. I'm surprised this isn't the front page news headline. They can't even count. How can we trust them to solve this? And I think, or they're telling us inaccurate information, either knowingly or unknowingly.
There was that really famous instance at the University of Toronto where this one guy, I don't even remember what
Lawrence Farrell.
Yes, what was
Why
his
Men
book
Make
about?
More.
Yeah, Why Men Make More.
Yeah, it was a multivariate analysis of the income disparity between men and women. He used to be a feminist activist. He decided to go look into the claim that women were making. I think at the time it was 70 cents for every dollar that men were making. He thought, well, I have daughters. I better go check this out and see, do a little bit of in-depth investigating. And what he found out was that there were many reasons for the disparity. And perhaps one of them was unfair discrimination, but there were another dozen, and they seem to account for more of the disparity than the discrimination. I mean, just the fact that men take the more dangerous jobs is a huge contributor to that. And it's not trivial. You should get paid more if you're putting your limbs on the line. I mean, I grew up in northern Alberta where a lot of young men dropped out of school and went and worked on the oil rigs. It's like, you go try that. Well, maybe you could do it. But, the guys would lose their fingers, they'd lose their toes, it was 40 bloody below up there, and they'd be wrestling pipe in the middle of the bush.
I have a friend who does it. I have a friend who does that in northern Alberta.
Right.
It's horrific.
It is. It's tough work, man. And you're out in the bush for 2 weeks.
When you go outside, there's temperatures where you literally can't be outside of your truck for more than 30 minutes.
Right.
You have to jump back in the truck, and
that
you're
was
almost
called
dying.
life where I grew up. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And those are very difficult jobs, and they're very high paying because people die.
Yeah, they're hard work.
And there's not a lot of women taking those jobs.
They got the fact that women had sacrifices of careers, but they had no understanding of the sacrifices in careers. Men made a myriad of sacrifices in their careers. They oftentimes learned that they had to either be a warrior or a sole breadwinner. And if you're a warrior, you have to be potentially disposable. Part of what men's were about were disposability. To this day, 93% of the people who are killed at work are men. But a much even higher percentage of men who are killed from the black lung diseases of being a firefighter. One of my good friends was killed from exactly that at the age of 52, 53. He died from the black lung disease that came from him being a firefighter. And so the feminists never understood or gave credit to the sacrifices in work. They always made it seem like work was privilege. Work was power. No, work was responsibility that gave up power. Pay is about a paradox. Pay is about the power that you forfeit to get the power of pay. That is, pay is about the power that you forfeit when you have to work 40, 60 hours a week at somebody else's behest, where you have to maybe move to a new location. It's when men have, we think of the pay gap as being discrimination against women. That is just plain not accurate. I wrote an entire book called Why Men Earn More, based on 8-9 years of research I did analyzing the pay gap, and found that there were 25 differences between what men and women do in their work-life choices. Every single one of those differences leads to men earning more money in the workplace. Every single one of those differences lead to women having a more balanced life, having more balance between the work and the home life. Now, if you define power as happiness, which is the way I define it, as opposed to the way men define it, which is power feeling obligated to earn money somebody else spends while they die sooner, which is not quite a great definition of power. Yeah. And when you define power as happiness, usually people who have balanced lives are happier. And so what women were and feminists were not understanding is that basically the traditional female role had carved out more opportunities for happiness. But with that before feminism, many women weren't happy either, because they were like Betty Friedan or Gloria Steinem or Katie Couric or some other woman. They had ambitions that could not be fulfilled. And so the brightest and best women in many respects, in terms of and ambition wise, were sort of left out in the cold. So the feminist movement came along and they gave to women the best possible combination, the being honored and feeling not shamed no matter what they chose to do. So they carved out an atmosphere in which women could discover themselves. So that's one of the positive contributions of the feminist movement. One of the negative contributions of the feminist movement is that they demonized men, undervalued the family, assumed that we lived in a patriarchal world in which men made the rules to benefit men at the expense of women. Men did not make the rules to benefit men at the expense of women. If men did make the rules to benefit men at the expense of women, it would be female-only draft registration, women going to war and dying while men had the chance to take care of children. It would be women paying for men. It would be addicting women to sexuality and making men feel repressed about sexuality so that women would feel the powerlessness that comes from wanting sex when the other sex doesn't want sex. It would be requiring women to take the sexual risks of sexual rejection when they were 13, 14, and 15 years of age, and fearing that they were not worthy of a man in their classroom, a boy in their classroom, that they were taking the sexual initiatives with. We would have had women paying for diamonds for men, but men not paying for diamonds for women. We would have had women paying for dinners and drinks for men, and picking up men and driving and sending men flowers. And Valentine's Day would have been about showering men with gifts rather than women with gifts. This is, when we say that women are the oppressed class, all of our norms would be reversed if in fact women were the oppressed class. There were no groups of slave owners who bought diamonds for their slaves, and who bought dinners for their slaves, and opened the doors for their slaves, and and feared rejection by their slaves. This is not an accurate comparison.
I went to university. All of the girls that I was friends with were majoring in fashion and textiles and merchandising. And they all went off to intern at Vogue and pick out Prada bags that maybe Kate Moss would wear on the cover of something. The average pay for that, if you want to be in fashion when you get out of school, is $20,000. Men were majoring in business and engineering and things that when you get out of school, you get paid more. If we're going to go in and we're not going to be taking serious majors, and we're shocked when we find out the world world doesn't need more people to pick out Prada bags for Kate Moss's shoot. I mean, that's not a gender wage gap. That's an interest gap, right? And that's what's happening. Also, women, we have different interests. Women aspire to get married. We aspire to have children. They leave the workforce earlier. Every single one of my girlfriends, what I'm saying is that a person that is a brain surgeon should not get paid the same amount as a person that wants to pick out Prada bags for the rest of her life. I mean, this is what's going on in America. When you look at the wage gap, they're not telling you what the jobs actually are and what women are going into in terms of their majors in university. When you're taking feminist dance class 101, you're not going to make six figures when you go out of university. That's just the truth. And women, if there was a real feminist movement, would talk about that, would say, hey, if you want to make as much as men, maybe we should be majoring in engineering and things like that. But we don't, because we have different interests, which is fine. But you then can't complain and think that we should now have a society that forces, what are we going to do? Are we going to have like a government that says now we have to pay women that want to go into fashion six figures to make them feel good and like they're doing things that are productive in society? Like that's not a practical solution. If we want to get serious, if women want to make more than men, they do. It's actually been proven statistically in America that when they go into the same majors and take on the same jobs, women get paid more than men in those particular fields.
Google, for example, did a pay equity audit 2 weeks ago.
That was last week.
And Google said we must go after gender-based wage discrimination. Turns out that men were being significantly underpaid at Google, so they dished out $9 million in bonuses to men at Google because women are being overpaid. Candace made a brilliant point. In the States, you look at the 5 majors that are the highest performing majors, the 5 majors that are 5 lowest performing majors. So roughly the 5 highest performing majors in the United States of America: petroleum engineering, business, finance, things of that nature. They're 80 to 90% more or less dominated by men. There's only one major that are dominated by women, a single out of the.
And I was like, what's up? And she's like, what I'm taking you through